Hi, and welcome to Rich in Relationship. And today we are speaking with Michelle Sarao, who is a professional organizer. She's got years of office and home experience, and she's channeling that through her company, Divorce RX, which helps families to get organized as they're resolving the conflict and trauma of divorce. How are you today, Michelle?
Hi, Rich. Good morning. I'm doing really good today, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. We've spoken before, and I really enjoy speaking with you. And I feel like we're on a parallel mission together to help families in divorce. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the first question I ask everyone on the show
Uh-oh.
is, if only I could drum like a real drummer. They actually have rhythm. The first question I ask everyone on the show is, how has your heart or your passion led you to do the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I love that question because this is such a mission of passion for me now. Like you mentioned, I have a background as a professional organizer. And even before that, I have a background in education. And so I've always been very child focused. And in my organizing, I happen to have worked with a lot of families with all different age children and helping them to both organize their space as well as include the kids in the organizing process, because the toys and the art, supplies, those are all the kids' property, so to speak. And so I really believe firmly that kids should have some ownership over their things and the organizing and the care of their things. So moving that further into the divorce world, and where I am today, um, as a divorced mom of three kids, I took the personal experience of being divorced, as well as my professional experience of being an organizer and working with a lot of families. And, it kind of happened where one day I was speaking with someone in just a different realm of my life. And she mentioned to me that she and her husband, who were divorcing, hired a professional organizer to help them divide their belongings.
Hmm.
And she said that was really, really helpful because, it can be a little contentious and people go into that kind of a situation. And there's a lot of emotions that are difficult that come up, and people are afraid of getting taken advantage of, and they want to make sure that they're getting their fair share, et cetera, et cetera. So I took that little seed that she planted in my head and started to run with it and say, well, okay, that's good, but how can I help the children and help the parents going through divorce to have less stress, because that's the goal here: less stress, less overwhelm, less chaos. And so I started to speak to people in the divorce world, both professionals as well as people in my life who I knew, and lo and behold, there was really some good feedback. And I looked and to see who was doing this out there in the organizing world, and I was kind of surprised to find out, in fact, nobody really was. And so that became my mission, my passion, to see how I could help these families, help the parents, help the kids at this time show up, help the parents show up for themselves, show up for their kids, and give them the skills that they needed to organize their physical space and their households at this time.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think anyone who's listening can relate to the idea of when we're going through real trouble or disconcerting times, if our environment is chaotic, if we're having trouble finding even simple things, we're having trouble finding our keys, we're having trouble finding our wallet, we don't know where that sweater is we needed to wear for this meeting, not that we have a lot of those going on right now, or whatever scenario you can imagine, it just adds to the stress and builds to the stress. Or when you get up and you see chaos and you're experiencing chaos, it just compounds the experience of, oh my God, it's out of control. I'm never going to get where I want to get, et cetera, et cetera.
A
So it
hundred
makes
percent.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious about something. As you were speaking, I actually know several professional organizers, and
Mhm.
I'm guessing that in order to work with people going through divorce, there's something that distinguishes you from a regular organizer. I'd love to know more about that.
Right. So exactly. And it's actually been an interesting transition for me, because I will sometimes get calls from people wanting the regular organizing. And I really feel I've had to make the tough choice. of oftentimes saying, you know what, I really, my passion, like you mentioned before, my passion is really working with these divorcing families. And there are organizers out there who can do the basic, organizing, or specialize, have other specialties like working with the senior population or moving and all those
Uh-huh.
types of things. But what distinguishes me, first of all, I do think that people see me as someone who's quote unquote survived. I'm still
Mm.
standing. I've been through it. I've gone through it, and I've thrived professionally. I've thrived personally. And I think that people see a lot of hope with that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that connection. But on the practical level, I feel very strongly like these are uncharted waters for many people have not been here before. And so for someone who has done it and watched their children go back and forth, that transition between the two homes, there are all sorts of variables and logistics and scheduling and just basic things like making sure you've got extra textbooks, making sure, do you need extra cleats? Do you
Mm.
need, all of those types of, do you need an extra passport? There's a thing called a passport card. You don't know what you don't know. And so I don't mean to say regular organizers who don't have the experience of having gone through it themselves, they wouldn't even think of these things.
No, of
So
course not. Yeah,
yeah,
so what I'm hearing loud and clear is you don't just come in and organize the space. You're working with men and women who are in the divorce process, helping them to think about, all right, how does this need to be organized to have my life work, given that our children are shuttling back and forth, or maybe it's one of these, I haven't ever seen this, but I've heard about these nesting situations where the kids are in the house and both parents are in apartments, but there still is a lot of shuttling going on. I mean, the good news about nesting is the kids have all their stuff in one place, but the parents don't, though. They
right.
still have to figure out how to, without bringing an overnight bag, how they're going to make that work. So you help them to think through the actual logistics of
Correct.
divorce.
Yeah. I mean, when we, go into divorce, everybody, no matter what the details of your specific divorce are, whatever your budget is, wherever you are in life, you are having to deal with financial, you're having to deal with legal, you're having to deal with emotional health oftentimes, and you're having to deal with, which is your area, and you're having to deal with custodial things. And so you bring in help, you bring in professionals to help you with this, but this is an area that I observe that no one is helping with. There's not specific help. So I really feel that bringing someone in to work through these logistics that affect parents and kids on a daily basis, and can help run the homes, the physical space, as well as the household management of the academics, the health issues, the social activities, all kinds of things, that can have the potential to fall through the cracks when parents who are going through divorce are busy putting out fires, as they should be. No one is making summer plans or thinking through their high school child's options for down the road. That's not scheduled in because they are spending their time just dealing with what's right in their face.
Yeah, they're trying to keep all the balls in the air and make
Absolutely.
it through this incredibly challenging time. So
Right.
you work with men and women. What are some of the differences between working with men and women? I mean,
Right.
I know that we live in a society now where everyone's equal, and we are.
Right.
Presumably, everybody's equal. Like
Right.
we're certainly working hard on it. But the reality is, there are differences between men and women. So
Yes.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
what do you experience in your work with men and women?
Right. So I love that question because, and this, I'll just take you back for a second of how I originally got into this was thinking, okay, I'm going to be this advocate for the moms and the children, and I'm going to help them because this is so hard on moms and children. And that was my focus. And that was a mistake because I wasn't looking at the whole picture. And it was actually a mental health professional who I had an early conversation with, who I shared that idea with. And she said to me, well, actually, what she found in her practice was that it was the men who were really having a harder time pulling their homes together
Mm.
to have the kids there in a comfortable way. She gave me an example of a dad that she was working with who, left and set himself up in an apartment. He's got, he was all ready to have his kids. He had a 1 bedroom apartment, a pull-out couch, and 3 kids. So,
He
that
really
doesn't,
hadn't thought it through too
he
well.
hadn't thought it through. But when the kids went to go there, the mom dropped them off, and 2 seconds later, the mom was getting texts and calls, pick us up, we don't want to stay. And so
Mm,
that was not helping the mom. So she said to me, which I thought this was brilliant, she said, the way that you can help really the moms, and then really the whole family, and specifically the kids, that's a big focus of mine, is to help the dads, make sure, and the moms, when necessary, make sure that they are set up in a way that works, so
mhm.
that the moms then get their time. And then this translates, into both parents. When you have your children 100% of the time, and you are 100% in charge of all of their needs as the sole adult in the house, that is exhausting. And so
Mm,
when you drop your kids off, or your kids get picked up to go spend time with the other parent, you need that downtime for yourself, for your social life. If you're starting to date, or whatever it is that you're doing with your life, you need that downtime, and you cannot be worrying about receiving texts from your kids saying, dad doesn't have the right charger, come
right.
bring the charger, or mom doesn't have my
There's no
cleat.
place to put my clothes.
Exactly. And the other thing these days is because we're all remote in some way, for sure, a homework space that's appropriate for each kid, a workspace, is a huge thing that's been coming up for me. Making sure, how do you make sure that each kid has what they need? What does that look like? And oftentimes, again, parents maybe even not going through divorce are not so sure what that looks like. So that's another really, like,
You know,
timely way.
I'm
Yeah.
flashing back to when my parents got divorced and I asked to live with my dad, and he was totally unprepared. I mean, it wasn't quite he had a pull-out couch, but um, my bedroom was also his assistant's office.
Right.
So I had to, if there wasn't school, I had to roll my butt out of bed in time for the assistant to work, and it wasn't super comfortable, and it took him a while to figure out, wow, this really isn't working. And basically what happened was I moved into his bachelor pad / office. I think
Exactly.
a lot of dads just don't think about that when people are getting divorced. A lot of times they think, I'm getting rid of the other person, I'm starting my life over, but they forget, oh yeah, and we have kids together, and we're going to be in touch with each other forever, and I need to have a life that's comfortable for my children also.
Absolutely. And what comes out to me from that story that you're telling me is, how did that make you feel? And you
I was
know,
so honestly, I was so relieved. My mother and I didn't get along at that time. I
okay,
was I was like 15 and in massive
right.
rebellion. I was so relieved to be living with my father, who I experienced as less contentious at that time,
Mhm.
that it rolled right past me.
Right.
And I will add to that when my father did get an apartment and I had my own room, I was like, oh my God, this is so much better. So I think I wasn't really, I didn't feel comfortable with it, but I wasn't really cognizant of what I needed. And I think that's part of what you can really help people with is a lot
Right.
of times kids don't know what they need either.
That's right.
But they know it when they know the difference when they experience it. Just like I didn't, at the time I was like, okay, it's going to be like this. But then when I got my own room, I was like, oh, this is so much better.
Exactly.
It's like it's now that's something that you can really help with. It's not just. I think for fathers in particular, there's a tendency to say they're all right with it,
Right.
and someone needs to wake them up to, they may be accepting of it, but it's not what's best for them.
Exactly. And to take your example, which I like that example, but and I understand what you're saying, like, it was almost like the lesser of two evils of what was going on. You were more focused on just being out, less focused on what your space looked like. But for a child or children in a family who, they don't necessarily have a preference over which parent they're with, for them to feel that their needs are considered, especially by the parent who's moving out of the home and setting up a new home. Kids, I think that all of us, and I will speak for everybody who's ever gotten divorced, I do believe that there's some, people are very nervous about how the kids are going to take it. And that's a huge thing.
Hmm.
And what I have found with myself, as well as with talking to many others who have been in the same situation, is that's a lot of our stuff. That's the adult stuff. And yes, of course, for children, it is a loss and they are not psyched about it in most circumstances. However, children react and respond in age appropriate ways. And for children, it's not a big, emotional thing right away, which is not to say, of course, that they don't need the mental health support possibly, but they want to know, like on the ground running, how is this going to affect my life? Am I going to be able to go to the party on the weekend? Like if I'm at dad's house or if I'm at mom's house, how am I going to make it to soccer practice?
That's why I want to go to dad's house, because I could go to the party and he didn't
Exactly.
care what time I came back. That let's
Right.
be completely transparent.
Okay. So we're learning a lot about you now, Rich.
Yes.
Right. Right.
But I think also, I think that for children, the point is that there's a lot that goes on there. It's a lot more than also where you can sleep. It also has to do with boundaries and stuff like that, which is not
100%.
really your work. But there is a sense of boundary setting that goes on with having an organized space.
Absolutely. And yes, it's not necessarily my work. And I don't like to get involved in the emotional, but I will just say, just organizing in general is there is a little bit of a crossover with every single one of the clients I've ever worked with. There's a reason why you have what you have in your home, and there is very much of an emotional component to it. So there can kind of some of that can come into my work with the divorcing families. But the parenting piece, like you're saying, oftentimes they want to know, they want suggestions. How do I, and oftentimes it's not that difficult. It's not that complicated. It may just be something that they had not thought of. Like, you know what, you need to get on the email list of the teacher. Like they missed parent teacher conferences. Well, how was I supposed to know? Well, are you on the list? Well, no, my wife or my husband always took care of that, So it's back to that, you don't know what you don't know. So, someone suggested to me, you're like the secret weapon. You kind of like slide in and you go, all right, you're going to need to do A, B, C, and D. And, or you're not, or, what applies to your life. Mm-hmm.
I think also the kids don't know what they don't know. So you're basically, right, as someone who has experience with this, you get in there and really help them to understand not only what they're going to need to have their lives work, but to understand what the kids are going to need to have their lives work. And that's amazing.
Right. And for the kids, I was starting to say before also about, the kids are not that complicated, for you to show your kids, they really feel like they're thought of and considered. For you to have that charger, for you to have, you go to your mom or dad's house for the first time, you've got a garbage can in your room. You've got a toothbrush in in the medicine cabinet. You don't have to, it's not just, the transition from one home to two and to a new home is unsettling enough, and discombobulating enough to have those little comforts that do not scream out at you, really make a difference.
I'm thinking about some of the men that I've worked with who have children in their lives, and about all the ways in our conversations that it was evident to me that they hadn't really thought about their child's needs. They were very concerned about winning over their children. They felt that the other parent was narcissistic and trying to alienate them from their child, but they didn't really think about the things they could do in their environment. I wish I'd known you when I was working with these guys. They never really thought about what they could do in the environment to really tell the child that they are welcome and that it was their space also.
Yeah, I love that. And so that's why a big part of where I'm moving also now that's come up is to empower these men and dads and to say, you know what, you do have the skills. And maybe you don't have the exact skills, but you have that willingness and you have that desire to show up for your kids as a whole dad. You do have the ability to take care of every need of your child. And maybe there are some gaps, but let's fill them in. Let's not have you be pushed down by what society tells you or what your ex-mother-in-law tells you or what your ex-spouse tells you.
Yeah.
Let's empower you. And that is, you asked me back at the top of this, what are my passion? And my passion, as the mom of two boys, this is also, for me, empowering the next generation of men. And how do we do that is through showing the dads, that they can do this and giving them the tools. And then their children, men, boys and girls will see, what, it's not just mom running the whole show, how it might have been, decades ago. It's both two equal parents. And I truly believe, and you can back me up, kids need two strong, healthy, competent, involved parents, I think.
Yeah. And what I hear, though, equally important, I mean, I'm sort of in my own mind making the distinction. I keep thinking of these clients that I've worked with. They developed the confidence that they were good parents, and they really loved their children, were there for them. And I think what was most difficult for them was really knowing how to ask for what they didn't know about. I mean, they knew enough to work with me because they knew that they were in stress, and they knew that I could help them with that. And so attorney referred them to me, but they didn't know how to ask. I think they didn't know how to ask for help with, how do I make this a welcoming space for my child? How do I make this a space that tells them that I'm thinking about their needs, even the needs they don't know they have? And it sounds like that's really something that Michelle Sarao does. How can people find you?
So I have a website. It's divorcerx.com. You can find me there. And on the website, it discusses all the different ways that I work with people. And I think it's important to just note that I believe that this is not a one size fits all situation for anybody. And, there's a baseline of suggestions of how I work with people. But that's just a starting point. And I am open and flexible and really interested to meet people where they are today, and figure out how I can help them move forward positively in a graceful way.
And of course, we will have that website address in the notes for the podcast and video blog. I believe that you have an offer for our listeners today. What would that be?
I do, Rich. Thanks for asking. So one of the ways that I work with people is something called a power hour. And it is an hour conversation. And during that hour, ask people to bring to me their biggest pain point. What's the biggest thing that is keeping you up at night? Let's talk about it, and let's give you some actionable steps to move forward with it, and to knock it out and move forward. And the other thing, so you're getting, some steps to move forward. And the other thing it's doing is allow us to kind of like try each other on for size, because, when I work with people, it's like any other relationship, it's got to work on it's, you're not going to click with everybody. And so people don't have to make the investment of time and money right up front. We can have this little, trial kind of an hour, and get to know each other. And so, so I would love to offer that to your listeners. Anyone who gets in touch with me and mentions that they saw me here, I'd be happy to do that power hour complimentary. And
how do they schedule that?
So right on my website, there's a scheduling system. They can do that. And just also to mention, there is on my website a 30-minute free consultation that I do offer as well.
Great. And so what I hear loud and clear, though, just so the listeners know what you're offering, that we're going to walk away with guaranteed next steps, even if they feel like, Michelle's not quite right. Or if you're like, I don't know, maybe you need to work with another organizer. No matter what, they're going to walk away with next steps. So it's
100%.
It's a total gift of your experience, strength, and hope.
Absolutely. And I love that because, I feel like I do have so much to give, and I want to get it into the right hands. That's really important to me.
I love where your heart is. And so let me ask you the question that I ask everyone when we get to the end. What is the legacy that you'd like to leave behind?
Okay. Well, this is a professional legacy, I guess the question is. So I really think that I'd love to be remembered for highlighting the importance of being organized in your physical space and with your household management during and after divorce, for pointing out to the community, both professionals like yourself, as well as, people who are going through divorce, the connection between, like you mentioned before, a calm physical environment, a calm outer, how that translates into a calm inner, during a difficult time. And then the other piece that's, like I mentioned, recent is I'd really love to be remembered as someone who started that conversation, so to speak, or having people think about how to empower dads to get stronger as parents, and therefore be amazing role models for their kids.
Terrific. What a terrific legacy. All
Thank
right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for
thank
your
you.
time. And of
Absolutely.
course, we're going to be in touch in the future.
Thank you so much, Rich, for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.